Good evening, everyone. We're so sorry.
Hey,
We're super late. We're 38 minutes late. We hope that you got our announcements that we were having some technical issues. Again, for those of you who are tuning into Quantum GK for the first time, this is Donna Reyes. I'm your weekly host on this weekly kwentuhan, right? Quantum GK, Kwento is story or having a conversation. And tonight, we are very happy to have with us Mark Lawrence Cruz. Yay! Thank you so much, Mark, for being super patient with us. Mark is the lead for Gawad Kalinga's anti-hunger campaign, which is anti-hunger program, I should say, Kusina ng Kalinga, and also for SEED, School for Experiential and Entrepreneurial Development. I want to make sure I get that right. I have my cheat sheets. Sabi ni Maricel, dapat daw 90% ako mag-English. Because we do have most of the people who watch our weekly chats, conversations are people who are based in the US, and many of them may not understand Tagalog. So we're just going to try and make sure that we don't obviously alienate them. But there are some cuento that there's really no direct translation to English,
yep,
di ba, Mark? So, kumusta? I know back to back typhoons, right, in the Philippines. How are you? I hope you're
yeah,
safe.
we're
Everyone's safe.
just we're still reeling from the back-to-back of typhoons, Rolly and Ulysses. So um, badly hit are Bicol and Metro Manila, and right now we're getting assessments as we speak, and probably before this webinar is over, we'll have plans of how we can respond. But definitely, yes, a lot of our kababayans in Bicol, Metro Manila, Quezon, in Bulacan, Rizal are severely affected.
Right.
So yeah, I mean, but otherwise, we are happy that even during this time, we are able to do a lot of good. Like Dan and Luis and Mark are actually down in Bicol right now, distributing relief
Right.
for Typhoon Rolly. And right now, as we speak, we are preparing to do provide hot meals for those in the evacuation centers in Metro Manila. And so, while this massive disaster, we're also thankful in a way that we are able to do some good at a time when things are very difficult. That GK is a channel to do a lot of good and to help people, help those in need. So, I mean, something we have to be thankful for, that in a time of disaster, we play a big role.
Right. I mean, I saw the videos that Dan and Luis took from Bicol while they were
Yep,
assessing the damage there and everything. It's really heartbreaking. Like
yep,
people with no, roofs on their, literally no roofs over their heads, right? And last night, actually, my sister-in-law who lives in Quezon City was messaging me, and she told me nakakatakot. They were
yep,
so scared because she felt like the roof was going to come off the you
yep,
know the townhouse where they were living, I mean the place where they live. And and I mean, I just imagine that's in Quezon City. We live like 3 blocks away from GMA Network, and it's not as bad, but it was bad already. She
yep.
was scared. All right, well, we're going to talk about, I mean, obviously, that's an ongoing thing that we really do need to talk about and spread awareness of what the people there really need and how we can help and everything. But I also want to take this opportunity to talk to you about the programs that you lead in Gawad Kanina. A lot of the people here who are watching us are obviously advocates of Gawad Kanina, and they support the work for the poor and everything, but they may not know as much about the programs, right? And this, I would really like to take this opportunity to talk about that. So let's start with Seed. Can you tell
Okay.
us a little bit more about that program?
Okay, so SEED is the school established by GK in 2014. It was established as the social education arm. You know, at some point in our history, we realized that we cannot run everything from within GK, and there were many other fields that we can really there were many approaches to ending poverty. And so we were very clearly aware that the work of education and ending poverty are so intertwined. And so upon the recommendation and actually invitation of then Secretary Luis Cho, then Director General Joel Villanueva, it was a time when the K to 12 was being introduced to the Philippines, no? And
Mhm.
so they were saying, "Oh, GK, importante to. Why don't you establish a school so that you could teach, these values because there's a new opportunity. Just because back then there were no schools offering 11 to 12, but also back then it wasn't clear who's supposed to do it, whether it was the TESDA or DepEd. And so that's how it got started, really, just like most things in GK, from conversations, invitations, but anchored very deeply on our mission of ending poverty. And so we started out as a school for social entrepreneurship, and we still are. However, in recent year, like just last year, very new, prior to the pandemic, we realized that many of the students and scholars that were enrolling in the school actually come from the rural communities, and many of the businesses being proposed were really agriculture in nature. And so
Mhm.
we more and more got exposed to agriculture and actually realized that if we are to really make a dent on ending poverty, it has to be in the agri sector. And so we made that decision to scope and limit and focus on agri entrepreneurship. And that's where we were when the
Mhm.
pandemic hit. No, we were at the midst of trying to focus, and the pandemic
Um,
just really, and I think was the final nail on that coffin and really said, this is where you need to go, because one of the first things that was the faced by communities was food. The food system was
mhm.
just challenged. And so all the more we realize the value of agriculture in our society and in our life. And so because of that, Donna, we have really zeroed in. So the good news is during the past 6, 8 months of this pandemic lockdown here in the Philippines, Seed, I'd like to share with you, did not stop. In fact, we might be the only school that did not stop operating because we are in a live-in program. So our students and teachers are there in our campus in Bulacan and in Bukidnon.
Mhm.
And so,
Mhm.
while face-to-face classes were not allowed, we were already face-to-face every day. And so we found a way to keep on going on with our lives. And so over the course of the pandemic, we expanded our farms. But um, surprisingly and miraculously, over the past 6 months, we actually secured accreditation to start issuing short course programs on agriculture. And so we have been able to recruit a new batch during the pandemic, surprisingly. And so that's where we are now as Seed. So after 6 years of existence, we've graduated over 200 graduates from maybe 60 provinces nationwide. We now have two campuses, one in Bulacan and one in Bukidnon, and we're poised to open 3 or 4 more by 2021. And the goal really is to be able, the medium-term goal, is to be able to graduate at least 3,000 agri-entrepreneurs from 1,000 GK communities. The spirit behind that is we want these young agri-entrepreneurs to be leading the future of the communities we build. And they have to think of new ways of getting income. They have to think of new ways of injecting new energy and connecting to all the government services, because there's so much support for agri. And
Mhm.
that's really the crazy thing. There's so much money allocated to agriculture, but the farmers are nearing 60, 63 years old.
So
And so
walang
there
next
walang
generation.
next generation. So in
Right.
fact, that's what GK Seed is fill. We are finding ourselves filling in that gap. The average age of the farmer in the country is around 60, Donna. The average age of our farmer in Seed is 18.
Oh, wow. Okay.
So we have cut the age gap by by
Yeah, yeah.
by a third.
Right,
And
right.
so we are actually solving a systemic gap right now. And so this is the excitement, and this is where Seed found itself. We are finding ourselves to be one of the most active and actually very dynamic agri-entrep schools in the country today.
That's really, I mean, that's really amazing how, we're promoting agriculture because obviously we have the natural resources for that, right? In the country. And then obviously, like you mentioned, there is a need for it, a big need for it, right? A huge need for it. But has it I was, and that's quite interesting, and how we are really promoting, entrepreneurship, right? Is that something that, as a culture, like as Filipinos, is something that, was difficult to, introduce, or were there challenges to introduce that to be to, Filipinos, or are, like the common story would be that, people, our parents would want us to go to school so that, we find a good job, and pretty much that's how, success is defined, right? So was it a challenge to introduce entrepreneurship and, being your own boss, so to speak, and having your own enterprise? Was that a challenge to introduce to people and have them embrace it?
Yes, it was challenging because it was alien. When one of the first things we tell our students is that, the most important thing you will get from our school is not this certificate of competency that says you graduated something. The
Mm-hmm.
most important thing you're gonna get here is that at the end of this process, it is very possible that you're gonna get a piece of paper that says this is a business registered under your name, and that blows their mind away, right? Just
Yeah.
off the bat. It's difficult, but there's also an upside to it because it's so alien. There's also a lot of excitement for it. There's also a lot of excitement and openness, but um, the real challenge happens when they're implementing already, because that's where it's not only them. Number one, it's alien to them. Number two, that's where you begin to realize, Donna, how fragmented our society, how disconnected the poor are from those who are able to help them.
Mm-hmm.
Like just simple things like the forms, simple things like the processes, or just knowing who to talk to. It's just all fragmented, or the grant giving bodies and those who need the grant for, they're disconnected. And so our graduates, the first challenge they find is all the opportunities are there, but they have to swim through a maze to be able to connect to them. Just to give you an example, there is I think a 2 billion peso program on youth entrepreneurship that has been sitting there for I think almost over a year.
Oh,
And
wow.
there are no applicants. Youth agri-entrepreneurs can loan up to 500,000 pesos each. So that's huge in terms of a startup for a young person.
Mm-hmm.
Number one, not too many people are applying because not too many young people are into agri. But number two, once we started applying for this last June. It's almost December, and we haven't even accessed the grant. So these are the natural challenges. But you see, the way I look at it is that we just need precedence. We just need to break that glass barrier. And once
Mm-hmm.
we've broken through, then we will send, an army of takers to be using all these wonderful opportunities. And so, yes, it's difficult, but Donna, true to the spirit of GK, we did not sign up for the easy. We signed up
That's
for the
true.
meaningful. We signed up for the
Exactly.
meaningful. And so for us, no matter how difficult it is, no matter how long or it takes, we're
Yeah.
just the stubborn hope weavers. We're just not gonna stop until we get it done. I
Right.
mean, if there's one thing that GK does not do, it's give up on the poor. So no matter
Right.
how, yes, it's difficult, but who
It's
cares?
doable.
It's
It's
doable,
doable. Right.
It's doable. And if it won't
Right.
work that way, I mean, there are many ways up a mountain. So let's just try and find another way. And I think this is really the spirit that I learned in GK, the spirit of walang iwanan.
Mm-hmm.
Tucked into that motto is also the spirit of walang susuko, or no one gives up, You know what they
Yeah.
say? It's not over till it's over. You're never really defeated until you're still trying. And I
Mm-hmm.
think that's what we're seeing in our students, in our mentors. Um, our mentors were locked in with our students, and they had to figure out online teaching while worrying about their own families. They had to teach but worry about transmitting the virus, and it was an alien teaching field for them. And yet, they learned to be an online teacher. And yet they learned to do things because it had to be done. And I think that's the spirit of, you were talking about entrepreneurship. That's the natural DNA that I'm working on. What I love about the
Mm-hmm.
natural DNA of the Filipino is that we've always glorified our resilience and our strength. And I'm using that. But one of the real challenges is this resilience and strength has always really just been about survival for the poor,
Mm-hmm.
wanting a better life for our family. Two things that are not bad, but are not enough to end poverty. It's not enough to end poverty. And so I think that's where GK plays its, sorry,
It's okay.
that's where GK plays its role of
Uh-huh.
actually pushing that, using that resilience, that strength, that love for family, and expanding it, and expanding it. Sure, you can survive, but can you thrive with others? Sure, you can make
Mhm.
your family survive, but how many families survive because of you? So those are the slight tweaks that we're taking, Donna, using what's natural to us and not criticizing it, but pushing it to its next level. I think that's what we're doing with your question on, is it natural to the Filipino? Yes, it's so natural to be entrepreneurial for us, but we need to give it a new goal other than survival and helping our families. I think we just need to go to the next level of this game of resilience and survival.
Right. Well, you mentioned mentors and teachers. Who are the mentors and the teachers? Are they entrepreneurs themselves? Do they have their own business that they're able to, share their own personal experiences to people who are, learning to be entrepreneurs?
All right. Right now, I have 80 students enrolled in the system, and I have a team of 12 mentors, excluding myself. Okay. Um, Initially, when the school was starting, we had a lot of part-time mentors, full-time business people, full-time farmers who were going to the farm to teach and all of that. Eventually, we had to get full-time teachers and some notes on mentors. I'm a teacher myself. Before I joined GK, I was teaching with Ateneo de Manila, and so my natural instinct was to hire teachers. But the first thing I realized was that a teacher will naturally teach what he or she has been used to. Now,
Mhm.
the difficulty in doing that in seed is because the number one subject is not your expertise. The number one subject is ending poverty. The number one subject is character and values formation. Now, that's alien. That's alien to so many people. So, I
Mhm.
had a great difficulty at the start convincing certain experienced teachers on how we do things. Like, when a student commits a mistake or when a student, goes wayward, the natural response was to punish and all of that. And that's right. But, I found myself explaining that, but the kind of poverty we're dealing with is the poverty of the mind and the heart. And while punishment addresses the error, it does not help the one who did the error. As much as if we would really journey with the person, and so they would go but that's so difficult, that's so cumbersome. So I found myself that was challenging until we had 2 or 3 batches of graduates, and some of them started applying to be mentors. And so a lot of my mentors now, of my 12 mentors, 70% of them, Donna, are actually graduates of our school.
Wow,
So
that's
they
amazing.
actually carry the DNA of Seed and GK. And while they may be not at par with teaching methodology and all of that, I found it that it was easier to teach teaching methodology to non-teachers than teach GK values, vision, and culture to teachers.
Yeah.
And so that's what we're doing now. But of course, I have a few professionals in my team just for the subject. So I have one licensed agriculturist in my team, who is our chief teacher for agriculture. We also have management graduates from Ateneo to take care of the entrepreneurship side. And so I do maintain a small network of people who are subject experts, but by and large, my mentors are now graduates of our schools or former GK volunteers. Because it is, as I said, SEED is essentially the school of GK. And so naturally, we need people who are graduates of our school. I mean, every other school does this. I mean, 60-70% of Harvard's faculty graduated from Harvard. I mean, 80% of Ateneo's faculty graduated from Ateneo. Same thing for UP, LaSalle, UST. I mean, and so I think that's the natural course of schools that you actually strengthen your own base of culture and teaching by
Mhm.
harvesting from the best of your graduates and really from there evolving. And we're still evolving. We're a young school. We're barely 6 years old. We're still figuring things out, but we're very happy with what we've discovered so far.
There's so many things there that you mentioned, and I mean, there's just a lot of questions that I really want to ask you, but we also want to cover the other program that that you are leading, and which is obviously not more important but also important, and it becomes more urgent right now with the typhoons and the pandemic and all of that, right? But before we go there, I just want to, I guess, close this sort of segment of our interview on the seed topic, on if you can share a success story of one or a couple of your of the graduates of seed, and what people what students can be looking forward to becoming or having once they graduate from the program.
I don't need to go far. Last June, we graduated batch 5. 22 graduates were graduated in the midst of the pandemic. They come from maybe 8 provinces. Obviously, they could not travel back home. And so they were stuck in Bulacan. So, but instead of being stuck and doing nothing, what we did was expand the farmlands of the farm. And so, since June till now, these 22 people have established 7 farming enterprises.
Oh, wow. Seven.
Some
So
are
what
in
are the, yeah.
there are 2 groups doing vegetables. There's 2 groups doing chickens, one for eggs, one for meat. There's one that started with pork, but we got hit with African swine fever. So pretty much our pigs perished. And so true to entrepreneurial form, they converted their pig pens into duck pens. And so one is into ducks. Another group is into fertilizer making. And this is now the ecosystem then. There are those enterprises are there, and some of them have been supplying vegetables to Bayan Aniham. Our fertilizer makers are now supplying, for the booming gardening industry in Metro Manila. And this is just since June. 7 enterprises under our nose during a pandemic.
That's
During
amazing.
a
And then, of
pandemic.
course, I personally met Anna
You
Salamat
know,
and Danilo,
yep,
what's his
a
last name
blend.
now? Ablen, right? Last year in October
Yeah,
during
well,
our,
Danilo himself, when we brought him there, was talking about his juice product and all. You know, that's gone. The juice product is gone. The market did not work out and all of that. He was very sad for his dream not happening for the juice. But the last time I was in touch with him before during the pandemic, I visited June. I met with him June face to face when I went to the farm, and I was so happy because he was telling me, the juice thing didn't work out. But you know what? What we did now, our family now is into pork production. So they actually have a backyard pork production, and they're doing like 80, 60 heads at a time. And they said that through their family's effort, they were able to renovate their GK house, and now they have a second floor.
wow naman, ang galing!
So, less than a year since we went there, nag-down yung business na dinala niya dyan.
Yes,
Nalungkot-lungkot siya, nawala siya ng kaunti, gusto na sumuko. Pero
right.
bumangon uli. Ngayon, nandyan. And well, the sad news is the storm, I think, hit their house and their
Mm.
piggery. But, the latest post that I saw from him was, babangon uli tayo dito. And,
Yeah.
for me, success is not this accomplished thing. We have this illusion of success as, this trophy that it's done, it's
Mm.
completed. But, just like many big things, success, victory, Pope Francis in his latest encyclical shared with us that, big things like unity, peace, happiness are not once in a lifetime things that we achieve and it stays there. These are
Mm.
things that we work on every day. And so for me, when you ask me for a success story, yeah, Danilo's there. When he presented, he talked about his big plans. But for me, he is a success story because in him we find the DNA for success, which is not giving up, always finding things. We're still waiting for that breakthrough, but I think he's slowly breaking through. He's into agri and all of that. Anna's business went down because of the pandemic. The shirt business went down. It sunk
Mhm.
because of the pandemic. But during the pandemic as well, I got a call from one of our volunteers and leaders from GK Australia, who recently retired and put up a business in Manila. So it's Australia, and he called me in the midst of the pandemic. I was thinking he would ask about what we're doing for the pandemic, but he just phoned me and said, "Hey, mate, I just want to let you know that our company's up, and we sent out a call for applications. And I just want to let you know that, one of your people got in, Anna, Anna got in. Um, getting a job is not the big news. My big news is that she actually bested people who were from other schools that did 4 years,
Oh
and
my
and
goodness.
the one that who interviewed didn't even know who she was. Like that, the owner and the manager interviewing didn't even know about the GK connection, and she was hired on her own
Based on
strength,
her merits, right?
based on her merits, based on her merits.
Wow.
And so during the pandemic, Anna got employed, besting people who graduated from universities. And again, through her own merit. And I could go on and on. I could go on and on,
And then,
And to be honest with you, time dalawa lang naman dito. When I was in fact lamenting to my board, I was reporting to them, that of our graduates, 80% are actually on track to ending poverty, meaning either they're studying, they're employed, or they're in entrepreneurship. And I was lamenting to them that but actually really less than 10% are actually into social entrepreneurship or agri entrepreneurship, and I think we're not succeeding. And, it just hit me because the chairman of SEED is Dr. Alex Brillantes, who used to be the dean of the UP College for Public Ag
yes.
and commissioner for the Commission on Higher Education for the whole of the Philippines. And so I was lamenting na parang I don't think we're succeeding and all of that. And he just laughed during our board meeting and said, ano ka ba? Yung ibang school nga dyan, wala pang 2% and they've been around for hundreds of years. Meaning, and so,
Yeah.
to have 10% is actually huge.
Right.
And well, I myself, I'm a graduate of the School of Management. I did not go into management. I went into, how many of us really end up doing exactly what our schools taught us to be, right? So,
Right. Right.
and so that's what I see. Along the way, we have these success stories. There's still so much error going around, but we're nowhere near giving up or slowing down.
And I also wanted to point out, right? The I think what you had really instilled in the Annas and the Danilos and all of the students, that you mentor and teach is that resilience of of the Filipino and also of an entrepreneur.
Yep.
Kasi most entrepreneurs naman, even the biggest ones, even like the Jeff Bezos of Amazon and all of those people, they've gone through a lot of failures
Yep.
and failed businesses before they became profitable,
Yep.
right? So, and I think that's what you had instilled in them, obviously, is the
Yeah.
resilience. May not work the first project or the first time or whatever, but you keep going until you get it right and you get the
Yep.
right mix of to
Donna, I want to add this. I just recently did exit interviews for our batch who's about to graduate, and also the short program on agriculture we did. It's a 1 month program that we experimented with, just 1 month. And I did exit interviews, and one of the things I asked these people is that, what are the top 3 competencies that you learned by staying with us? And what really struck me was that apart from the skills on agriculture, one of the things that they really said they learned with us is that they gained the confidence to dream big. And I think that's something that
and that's a very
people,
powerful thing.
I mean,
Yeah.
yeah, when you're not born poor or when you're living in a non-poor environment, we take dreams for granted. Because we can dream. But what we don't realize is people from poor communities. There's one thing that poverty does to the poor, and it is to slaughter the capacity to dream. And it is really one of the most debilitating, one of the most hurtful things that can happen to a human being is to be reduced to a state wherein you can just think of survival. No better than an animal because you just want to live the next day.
Yeah.
And that's what we don't realize is when we move into educating the poor, yes, we need competency, but the thing that we really also need, I think even more than prior to competency, is a certain kind of character. And that's what I think is not stressed enough in most
Mhm.
education models is we need to really trigger the capacity to dream. And triggering that capacity is not a one-time process. It is the up and down process of believing, not believing, succeeding, failing, doubting, then fighting for it all over again. Because that's how you strengthen a dream. It's like a knife. You don't forge a knife one time. The strongest knives in the world are forged, melted, And I think that's the quality of a dream. And I think seed is like that. We're like a forge. We're like a forge for the capacity to dream. And I think that's one of the best things we're doing right now. If that's one thing that we're doing well by igniting big dreams among the poor and showing a path, this is how you can get that dream done. Then I think we're off to a good start. Well, we still have a long, long way to go. We have a long, long way to go, but I think the poor have shown us, and it excites me what they can dream of. This batch is about to graduate. They're about to go home in a few weeks. Their program got truncated by 6 months. We can't keep them anymore because of the pandemic. We need to send them home. They've been with us for over a year. When they presented their dreams, it's amazing what they're dreaming of for their communities. Their business plans are shared business plans. They're talking about this profit will benefit our communities. It's beautiful to hear that someone is
Yeah,
planning to make money, not just for themselves, but
but for the community.
for the community. It's beautiful to hear. Of course, I
It
know that
is.
they will run into so many frustrations in a few weeks. I'm gonna get a lot of calls, but I mean, so the last thing I tell them during the presentation, great plan, fail fast. Quoting Shannon. Shannon's
Yeah,
used to talk about failing fast. So go ahead and fail fast. Commit
right.
all the failures you can so that failures fade away and slowly victory will show its bright light.
Oh my goodness. This seed program should be an entirely different interview. And we shouldn't really cram everything in this one session, right? So I'm
Oh,
already telling people that we're going to go over time. Not only were we late, we're gonna go over time. I don't know. You canceled your other webinar, so you're ours for
well,
a few more
I don't know
minutes.
how long people can just bear looking at the two of us for how long. If you want, let's chew on seat a bit more and just schedule K&K for a separate altogether.
Well, no, I really want to touch on K&K as well because,
Yeah,
there's
sure.
actually a call for people to help out. We're
Sure.
doing, different projects here, fundraising projects here in the US in support of K&K,
Sure.
Kusina ng Kalinga. So I really want to touch on that a little bit more. So there you go. So Kusina ng Kalinga is the anti-hunger program of Gawad Kalinga, right? And I myself have been supporting it, just on a personal level, myself and my husband, not like by huge amounts or anything, but really, it just really breaks my heart. My husband and I don't have any children. It breaks our heart to see children who are hungry, that they couldn't, go to school or study because kumakalaman sikmura, because they're hungry. And it just really breaks our heart. So that has been something that, this year, my husband Rabi and myself have taken on as our personal, sort of, advocacy, I guess, of advocacy within an advocacy, right, of Kawad Kalinga. So for those people who are not as familiar with Kasina ng Kalinga, can you just give like a 1 minute spiel about it or something like that?
All right. The elevator pitch on Kusina ng Kalinga is we are Gawad Kalinga's anti-hunger program, and we provide warm meals to children aged 1 to 12. We operate kitchens nationwide, and we try to feed for 120 days because that's the minimum number of days by World Health Standards that you can really make an impact on malnutrition. But more than the malnutrition, is just really, staying with the child long enough so that for
Mm-hmm.
120 days, this child, as you said, can go to school properly. That's already more than half of the school year, can function properly. And for 120 days, just experience the ability to not survive, but thrive. And we do it for 20 pesos per kid per day, less than a minute.
So our computation here is that for $60, you can feed the child for 120 days. So
There you
that's
go.
like $15 for one child a month. That's a meal. That's one meal for like an average person, right? So that $15, $60 can go a long way. So that's my spiel to to
Yeah,
promote that because Gawad Kalinga USA is really, promoting
yeah.
that. So,
And
oh, sorry, go ahead.
yeah, and Donna, I want to go back to something you said earlier. Um, when it comes to feeding a child, nothing is too small or too big. Because, you know, you're right. There are two things that you said that are very important. Number one, that it broke your heart. Because it should. Kids are not born in this world just to suffer and be hungry. I have two kids of my own, and it breaks my heart. Every time I talk about this, it breaks my heart because it's not the child's fault that he or she was born in a poor family. That child had nothing to do with them being poor. Nothing, absolutely nothing. And yet, that child is suffering. And the kind of suffering that the child is undergoing is something that we can do something about. And, and I don't want to think of forever. I just want to think of today and tomorrow. And just as long as I could. So long as I could, I would. That's the philosophy. And, there's this beautiful parable of the feeding of the 5,000. And, you know, it started with 5 loaves and 2 fish. That's how it started. And I think what I want to share with you is that let's never doubt the power of a single act of kindness. Never, ever doubt. Because sometimes we get enamored with the bigness of our organization, the bigness of the problem. And yes, our solution should be big. I'm not saying that let's keep it small. But let's aim for big, but never uh, um, put lesser value to the acts of kindness that we do, because I think that's the biggest thing that can happen is once
Mm-hmm.
our hearts break and then that hurt transforms into caring, then what you have is the powerful formula to end hunger. Hunger ends where caring begins. Hunger ends where caring begins. And this is really the spirit of Kusina ng Kalinga.
Mm-hmm.
We're not looking at hunger as an economic, social reality. It's a human reality. This is a child. This is a child who's hungry. And in the
Right.
Philippines, right now, because of the pandemic, it ballooned from 5 million children to 15 million children who are hungry over the
Mm-hmm.
course of 6 months, Donna. It tripled, 15 million. And the pandemic is bad enough. So you're afraid of dying an instant death or a quick death from COVID. And then they're actually trapped in a situation of slow death from hunger. And it's painful to think about it that way. And so for the past few months, since May, we have been doing everything that we could to reach as many kids as we can. And so, we started in May with one experimental kitchen. I say experimental because as many of you know, we used to feed in schools. But now
Mm-hmm.
there are no classes in schools. So all this effort that we poured in for the past 5 years, building a network of 160 kitchens nationwide that are all in schools. So
But the kids are not in schools because of the
the kids are
pandemic.
not in schools. But see, again, the GK spirit, we're not gonna give up. We're not gonna give up. Okay? If we cannot, if the kids cannot go to us, we will go to them. And so what we did was we experimented with from school kitchens, we experimented with community kitchens. These are much smaller, more agile kitchens. We used to do 1,000, 2,000, 5,000 for every kitchen. Now we cannot do that because it's a smaller kitchen, volunteer
Mm-hmm.
workforce. And we experimented with one kitchen last May. It seemed to work a bit, so we made three. Um, we ended September with 20 kitchens. We
Wow.
ended October. We ended October with 40, and we're about to end November with 70.
How are you able to do that? You guys have your own limitations too because of the quarantine, the lockdown, I suppose, and all of that. Well, that would limit your mobility.
Very good.
That's
I
just
am
amazing.
I am limited. I just moved from Quezon City to Davao. So can you imagine the head of the program is like 1,004 kilometers, 100 kilometers away from them. But you're correct. If we were to do it, we would be limited and we would be unable to do that massive expansion. You know what was the key? The kapitbahayan.
Oh,
The residents of
wow.
the GK communities made this possible, Donna. And that's the beautiful thing. They are the ones operating our kitchen. So whereas before I had to train and deploy a specific team to run a 5,000, 1,000 meal operation now, we find a community, a GK community that can host the kitchen. We find volunteers in that community that are willing to volunteer. And then we go online and train them on how to run the kitchen. And then we plug them into our system. And it's amazing. It's amazing what the poor have done for the poor. And I say this very clearly. The GK communities only host the kitchen, but they feed the barangay. They feed the barangay. So while the donations are going to us and we put it in a GK community, I want to make it clear that it's not just for GK. What they do is they enroll 300 kids around them so that they get fed for 30, 60, 90, or 120 days. And you're correct. It's not GK Foundation that's great. What the greatest thing that has happened to all of us after these many years of us working together, alam ko isang tanong nating lahat yan, you know, tayong mga dinosaurs in GK, especially the village builders, those who have given so much. We always ask this. Many of you village builders always ask about sustainability, what's next, what will happen next. Did we really make an impact? And I have to be honest with you. I also ask the same thing. I started this work when I was 24 years old and now 40. I just turned 40. I've invested a good, the most numbers of my years in this and this. I
Yes.
always ask, saan ba papunta? Where is this going? I mean, did it amount to anything? And when I see something like this, then I get my answer. Then then that's my answer. That if the poor are now able to help the poor, and that's what we done. You know, over the lockdown, all the GK full-time workers, all were a measly what, less than 200 of us that are actually paid to do this. Um, we were all locked down. And yet, throughout the pandemic, we built those kitchens. We launched a massive relief pack distribution sometime in March and April. Um, During October 10, 2010, when the report on hunger was released, we responded by calling for a nationwide feeding. We targeted 10,000, Donna, through volunteers. We said, just find the hungry where you are and feed on your own. Walang ibababang pondo. Just do it. We just need to respond to the hungry. Our target is 10,000 nationwide. We ended up with 75,000 children fed in one day in
Mm.
600 locations, all volunteer driven. And this is, I think, what we have done. We have positioned the poor away from just being recipients to being the agents of change in their own communities. Of course, economically, they're nowhere near the minimum standards. But what I want and what I see personally is they are now a far cry from where we started 10, 20 years ago. Because 10, 20 years ago, they would have been our beneficiary. They would just be receiving everything we will be giving. But
Right.
today, they're not just receiving,
They're
they're giving.
giving.
They're giving. And during the pandemic, when we gave out the food packs, we even heard of stories of GK communities, because we could only give for them, they literally unpacked the food pack and split it in two, split it in three, so that they could give to others. And that was just them. They just posted, thank you, like, personally, I received a donation from San Miguel Corporation, and they gave us chicken. And the chicken came in packs of three. And they said, but I only need one. So they repacked the chicken
Aw.
and gave it to others. Now, my friends, this is what GK has done. You know, the dollars you put in and the time I put in for this, when I look at our numbers and our economics, maybe it's not showing there. But maybe because the work of poverty is really showing elsewhere. And for me, that's where I find my peace. This is not an excuse not to do all the other things we need to do. Hey, we're still doing it. We're still not giving up. But to see now, as you said, Donna, if it were up to the 200 of us, we would not have been able to grow the K&K network from one community kitchen in May to 70 by November without the capital. It would have been impossible without the GK residents themselves. They are the frontliners of ending poverty. We'll be doing close to 25,000 kids at the end of November. Very far from 15 million, very far, but 25,000 nonetheless. And that's why every couple who says my heart breaks and I will do this, that's what we need. And that's why now if you want updates on Kusina ng Kalinga, what you're seeing is my backdrop. We have
Mhm.
transformed and mounted a temporary campaign called Hunger Warrior Million Miracles Campaign, because last October 10, that's what we saw. That if volunteers do this on their own, they don't even need to give to GK. They
Mhm.
do it on their own, guided by GK. And you know what? Just before going with you live here, I was monitoring our disaster response. And literally, just before joining you, I saw reports of, Kuya, we had 8 locations that we were targeting. But our people started reporting, oh, Kuya, you know that barangay that joined us last October 10? They did not stop feeding. And in fact, they're ready to keep on doing this with us. They didn't tell us that they would go on,
They
but they
just
just were inspired by us.
on
And
their
so
own.
this is what the Hunger Warrior Million Miracles are. No, we want to inspire others to get engaged with feeding. Of course, if they give to us, like GK USA has done, you have chosen to give through GK, and that's great. But if you don't give through GK, it's fine. The other groups in the Philippines, meaning if they can do it on their own, better. If they can do it on their own, better. Because at the end of the day, Kusina ng Kaliga is GK's anti-hunger program. So there are 20,000 kids that we feed directly, and I think there are a few thousands more that we are feeding indirectly, meaning the funds did not go through us, but they're feeding with us because we are teaching them, we're strategizing with them. I mean, heck, if you ask them, when did you get started with this feeding program? Oh, we joined Gawad Kalinga. They're the ones who taught us that. And that's a role that we play in this country that we should never underestimate. Not just the things that we do on our own. I think our two hands can only do so much. But joined hands of other people, you know, on their own without wanting to control or telling them how to do it, so long as we're lifting the same thing, I think that's one thing that GK is able to do. Because we're telling them, if you want to give to us, thank you. But if you don't want to give to us, but still want to do it, thank you still. By the way,
Mm-mm.
here's how you do it. And you know, I've been in meetings that they're very surprised that I'll email them our videos, our manuals. Are these all for free? Yeah, they're all for free, meaning
The
you
more the
can
merrier.
the more the linear. So this is what the Million Miracles campaign is. If you want to know more about it, we've formed a separate Facebook group. It's called I Am a Hunger Warrior. So if you can, please join the Facebook group I Am a Hunger Warrior.
Let me write
Um,
that down so that
okay,
when I do the I am a hunger warrior, that's the name of the
it's a
Facebook
Facebook group, I
page.
Am a Hunger Warrior. When you click on it, it will ask you by joining this, you commit to feed at least 10 kids. No? Why? What's the idea? The idea is we call it a Million Miracles campaign. Why? Because we want to inspire 1 million adults to feed 10 million kids. So that's 10 meals each. You want to give through GK? Fine. You want to do it on your own? Fine. But one thing you do, feed. One way or the other.
Just
Feed.
do it one way or
Just
the
do it.
other.
So when people
Yeah.
ask me, so what are the steps? Number one, feed. How? Up to you. I want you to figure it out on your own.
Right.
Number two, if you've done that, then you've gained the right to ask others to feed with you. So ask others to feed with you, or if you want to feed more. Okay?
Mm.
The number three, when you've done that, feed more, feed longer. So feed, get others to do the same with you. And
Mhm.
number three, feed more, feed longer. Because sometimes we do it in reverse. We think of the total agad and not the starting point. Ako simple lang.
Mhm.
Dating komplikayan kasi sometimes by thinking of the sustainability, wala pang action, sustainability. Anong i-sustain natin? If we want to talk about sustainability, you know, in a webinar, I'm always asked that, what's the sustainability plan? And my standard answer is, you are my sustainability plan. The one asking the
I,
question.
you know what? I mean, just listening to you really makes my heart full. Talagang nabubusog yung puso ko from, what you're sharing because, like you said, dinosaurs. I actually joined Gawad Kalinga in 2003. I was newly married. My husband and I were newly married. And so, so 2003, 17 years na rin, ano? I'm not gonna tell
Wow.
you how old I was. Hindi naman naman ganun
I,
katanda. How old was I then? It was 2003. So I was 31 and I'm 40. So matagal-tagal mo din, di ba? And you're right. Like, people will ask, okay, so how many, like, people tend to ask, especially here in the US, no? Kasi we tend to be more practical, di ba? And we want everything measured by, by the numbers or by the dollars or by the number of houses, etc. I'm not saying that's a bad thing. I think we have to measure, right?
yes.
To look at our progress and everything. But I think what we don't often talk about is the measure of how not only how the number of houses that we build or even the number of children that we fed, but the number of people we built. How many people have we built in terms of spirit, right? In terms of now not of empowering them and not just
Yep.
receiving dole outs. One thing I really love about Gawad Kalinga and got me really engaged in it is that it's not the typical dole out, you know, system where, you know, oh, etong donation ko, take it and be done with it. No,
Yep.
we really encourage people to be committed, right? Especially like the GK Village Builders. We just had Tita Carol Tulud last week, and
Yes.
she talked about the challenges, being really candid and transparent, but also talking about the joy that it brought her and her family, right? And you know how she not only changed people's lives, but you know she changed her life. These people changed her life and her family's life in the process. So I think that's something that we really also, you know, especially in times of, you know, frustrations or whatever, laging nandiyan yan eh. There's nothing worth fighting for that comes easy, di ba? So there's always going to be that, right? So okay, so you mentioned, you know, a few times how you were a teacher and, you know, graduate ka ng I think business management, is that right, from Ateneo? So I just want to, you know, if you don't mind, just, you know, just tell us a little bit about your journey, how that all started. Kasi, so, tinignan ko yung Facebook page mo eh. Sabi ko, huwag na tayo mag-usap beforehand kasi I wanted to be a little bit more candid. So I just, you know, I just peeked at your Facebook page. So you graduated from Claret High School, and then you went to the Ateneo for got your bachelor's degree in business management, and you said you did not pursue business or management, and now you're, you know, you're doing, this is really more social work. I graduated from Miriam, and there's a social work course in Miriam, and a lot of times sa pagkakamalan akong social work you know, student at that time, but I'm actually communications major. But then I'm also involved in this work, right? So you're right. We don't always, you know, end up doing things that we went to school for or whatever. So how was your journey from that to now, to here, from where you started?
Hiwalay na webisode uli yan.
Ha? Isa bang ano yun? Isa bang buong webisode yun na hahalongkatin natin pati yung mga ano mo, yung mga romantic relationships mo?
Ayun, hiwalay talagang webisode yan. Love forum yan, love forum.
Alam, forum na ba yun? No, I think, yeah,
Um,
people might be curious to find out like how GK workers end up as, you know, with GK.
well, for most of us, I mean, really, for most of us, it's just a faith journey. I mean, if you want a quick answer, it's a faith journey. This journey has been rooted in a lot of love for country, a lot of love for God, a lot of love for our people, a lot of love for adventure. It was rooted, and we followed the path of where love would lead, because where love is, there God is, right? And so that has been true for me. Did I plan this? Hell no.
Yeah,
It
you
wasn't
could
my
have gotten
plan.
a job, you know, graduate
I
from
was,
Ateneo. I
I was,
remember.
I finished Ateneo. I finished management knowing one thing, that I did not want to do management. So even before graduating, I already fell in love with philosophy. So I actually did my master's in philosophy and started teaching philosophy right after graduation in Ateneo. I was a very young teacher. I was just what 1 year ahead of my students. I was a very young teacher. And I was doing that, pursuing my master's when in 2004, four typhoons came to the Philippines and devastated central
Yeah,
Luzon, central and southern Luzon. One of the largest devastations we've seen in recent time. In fact, prior to Yolanda, that was the largest destruction that we have seen. And so hundreds and thousands of people lost their homes. And so a massive rehabilitation effort was done, and Ateneo was made part of that. And I was a volunteer for the relief. And so when Ateneo transferred from relief to rehab, they had to assign someone to manage the partnership with GK. Well, I happen to be the youngest. I happen to be single in that core group. And so I was volunteered. I was volunturo. Ayan, hindi walang translation. Na volunturo ako. I was, someone else volunteered me to do the
dito
job.
voluntold.
Voluntold, yun,
Dito sa
voluntold.
amin, voluntold yan.
Yeah. Volonturo ako, and I accepted. And without really knowing that, I was just really, managing a project. It was a 10 million peso donation that we're making. And so someone had to manage it. And I was proud to handle it for the Ateneo de Manila University so I was more Ateneo. But,
Yeah,
encountering the GK people really changed my life when I was implementing the project. So I handled it in my business management way. Where are the Gantt chart? What's the budget? What's the variance? Choo, 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 choo. And of course, none of that happened, right? And so I was so fuming mad. Um, and in that after that, that's very distinct for me. After that meeting, that I blew my top because things weren't going according to plan. After we, the donor, have transferred all our commitments and raised the monies, um, I could not forget that because since that time, I noticed that every time I would visit that village, it was back then a 4 or 5 hour journey to the village I was managing. There would always be one or two GK volunteers traveling with me. And can you imagine for 5 hours, they would talk about GK, their story, and, gently tell me, that's why we're like this, that's why sometimes projects are not met, choo, choo, choo. Then, and what they were explaining was that, uh, it's right, we need to be on time and all, but we have to explain what GK is because GK is not a project. If you want a small project, then maybe we can stick to that. But what we're trying to do, and that's what they explained it to me, that poverty is not economic. It's really about the hearts and minds of people. And if you want to win hearts and minds, if you want to transform hearts and minds, unfortunately, that's not the topic of management. Management does not take that into account.
Yeah.
And that's where I really, really started giving it a second look. That's really when I started giving it a second look. And also during that time, I saw, I managed a volunteer group of students that had to go there and build the houses. And that was great because that's where I met my wife. That's where we met. So that's already, if I ask myself, ano ba, saan ba napunta yung buhay ko? Minsan sabi lang ng Panginoon, binigay ko ang buhay mo dahil sa GK kasi you met your wife and you're building your family here.
Ah,
So
may
shout out
pogi points ka niyan
uh,
kayo.
shout
Pogi
out to
points.
Pastor Cruz. No? Um, no, but really, for us, we look back to those days. And what really touched us both during that time was that, as you know, I was with YFC as well. I was with the community before. I was a YFC leader, I was sector head. And I worked for the longest time on youth transformation. And so I did hundreds of youth camps in my younger years, right? And I would introduce to them the love of God and evangelize. And yet, during this 2 or 3 months of working with Ateneo students, let me just shut up my dog. Sorry.
No, that's okay.
So uh, I saw a lot of young people transform through my youth camps in Youth for Christ. But in that 3 months, where I guided again a small group of students, three people who were friends, just started inviting more and more friends. And at the end of one summer, 2 months, we had a volunteer base of around 300 people going to the GK community. And you know what I saw is every Saturday, of course, we had nothing to do, so I had to give a talk. But I could not give the usual talks I used to give. Like I can't suddenly launch into a YFC mode.
Mhm.
But what really touched me is that at the end of every sharing, a lot of them really discovered God. Like they just discovered their own faith, they discovered God, they discovered their humanity. Exactly the things that actually drew me to my evangelization work. And really, I was so moved that and I couldn't forget what I learned then that if you love those and if you love and serve those whom the Lord loves and serves, then you will get to know the Lord. So sometimes you get to know the Lord directly. You pray, you go through
Yeah.
church, and that's great. That's a direct way of getting to know the Lord. You're intentional. But sometimes it can be really indirect and unintentional, and yet you will still end up within the Lord's embrace. And I saw so many of them rediscover their own faith and just really deepen, not in the religious way, but they related with God. And
Mhm.
and many of them actually ended up doing a lot of great things. Like one of the persons we always use as a poster girl for this is Reese Fernandez Ruiz, who
Yeah.
founded her own enterprise, the
R to R,
head
was
of
it?
Rags to Riches,
Yeah, Rugs
R2R.
Riches, right?
And Vana Gonzalez put up her own social entrep. Bem Olaguera is working with, you started with San Miguel Foundation. And I can go on and on. And many of them actually reconnected with their own life's purpose and the country's purpose in that group. And that's how I started. And so those were the years from 2004. Um, to 2006, in that time I started joining GK full time, and that was it. That was really that journey for me. And we are bringing up our kids in this GK community. So I feel that I am part of a GK community. Like I feel that we are a GK community, not a physical community, but a spirit community. I feel that while blood can bond family, I think spirit can also bond people, because blood was chosen to us by our Creator. But the
Right.
spirit that He has given to us, it is our choice to connect it to other hearts. And I think by being part of GK, we choose to connect our lives to each other. And so we are family. So we are family. And so for those many years, I have, as I said, we found each other here. We built our family here. Sining, my eldest daughter, was I think one of the youngest GK volunteers for a Bayani Challenge. She joined her first Bayani Challenge when she was 8 months old. She was in the
Yung
backpack.
wala pang
She was
malay.
in
But
she
she
was
pretty
in a
much grew
backpack.
up in the movement and
Yeah,
culture
and we brought
of
her to
Gawad Kalinga.
Bukidnon. We brought her to Bukidnon, yeah. And it's funny nga sometimes we all end up in the same day wearing the same shirt. Na parang, may event ba tayo sa bahay. And so I think that this is really where we are. And it has been a faith journey for many of us. We just being candid about it, we don't have much savings to boast of. We don't even have our own house yet. All of those years, I managed to buy a car. That's pretty much our asset. So if all goes down, we're gonna live in that car. But the beautiful thing, Donna, is that when Coco and I talk and our kids are growing up, and we say, "Is it time to hang the towel? Is it time?" Because we've given so much already. We're not tired. We're just asking whether it's time.
Right,
And then when we ask ourselves why, because we also want other things in life, right? I mean,
right.
um, and yet our conversation always ends up the same way, and it goes, in all of those years that we've been married, were we ever found wanting? And any one time that we did not have that we were not provided for what we needed at the time that
Right.
we needed it the most. And I will tell you that there's never been a time that I could say that I was wanting. It was just always enough. I never had excess. I always had enough. And so we say, less for self, more for others,
My
enough for all.
fathers. Yeah.
Uh,
That's
and
that's
uh, and I think that's
powerful.
where we are. And so, not to be, and so we said, yeah, we still want those things. And so what we did was, all right, then we just have to work double time. And so what we've done now is we started establishing our own businesses. So we just
Uh-huh.
work double time. I mean, we're not
Yeah.
gonna. I think we made a decision that um, we may let go of our businesses, but we're not ever gonna let go of GK. If it boils down to that, I think we will always choose to have GK and be part of GK, because GK for us is not an organization. GK for us is a way of life. It's a
I
way
was
of
gonna say, yes, it's a way of
I, I,
life.
I feel that I feel privileged, so privileged that I could rant on and on for 40 minutes and more. And you're telling me that your heart is full, because this is the spirit really of God's love flowing through the work.
Yeah.
And it's not my work. As you've noticed, I'm just talking about other people. The
Yeah.
work, I'm just a witness. I'm just a witness of this work. And we need to believe in this. This We cannot put our faith in projects and programs. These are just tools and instruments to win
Right.
the war. And so, yes, we will thresh out all our problems with our projects and our reports. We will do that. But please let us not equate the value of what we're doing with our projects and reports. Those two are not equatable. They are
Mhm.
related, but not equatable. What am I saying? The full value of what we do together as a family can never boil down to the simple projects that we do. I failed and screwed up so many kitchens, I will tell you that. You know? Um, and yet, we solved those problems. Some problems we never solved. We solved some of them, but what we never did was give up on what we set out to do, which was to end poverty, care for the people. And so long as we don't give up on that, we are succeeding. And when we
Mhm.
look back, there would have been successes that we never planned, that were granted to us. Like what's happening now to King and King. We never planned this, that it will be a volunteer run. We never planned it to be a movement. And yet now, in fact, maybe more people are feeding than us, and but we were part of it. We
Yeah.
were part of the journey because they were inspired by us. And so that is
Right.
our role. We don't need to. we don't need to own it to be proud of it. It doesn't need to be us to do it. We just need to be connected. That's all we need. We need to rejoice at the success of other people. And if the only thing we did was to touch their hearts and inspire them, then that's already big.
That's powerful. That's awesome. Well, at this point, I'm going to share some information on some of the projects that we're doing to raise funds for K and then also for the disaster relief, the typhoon relief. And then maybe we'll end up with your final message. I'll give you some, not that you need some time to gather your thoughts, obviously, but I'll let you gather your thoughts if you need it. But I do need this to announce a few things. So first of all, my and Robbie's, my husband and my personal fundraising thing that we're doing for K is the Tree for the Hungry campaign on Facebook, and it's on my Facebook page for those of you who are friends with me on Facebook. But you can also search it, Tree for the Hungry. So basically, we're decorating our tree with ornaments that represent the donations that we receive for the children who are hungry, right? So we actually launched it November 1st. So typically, right, that's the day we remember, our loved ones who passed away, the dead, right? But we also remember the living. And so November 1st namin sinet up yung tree. Typically here in the US, it's a no-no to set up your tree or Christmas, whatever thing, before Thanksgiving. You have to do it after Thanksgiving kasi big occasion din and holiday in Thanksgiving, right? But hey, we're Filipino. We start Christmas in September. So, diba? So, for us, we started it November 1st to launch that 1 month long, campaign to raise funds to feed the hungry. That's Tree for the Hungry. That's a personal campaign for Robbie and myself. And then also from December 5th, and I believe throughout December 31st, maybe. I'm sorry if I'm not quoting the exact date, but pretty much the entire December. We also have a campaign that's called Move, Give, Feed as One. This is a brainchild of Mayor Amante and is now being picked up by other regions, by other areas as well. So we're going to be raising funds for Kusina ng Kalinga also. And then finally, we just launched a campaign to support the relief efforts of Gawad Kalinga. And we are targeting to collect or to put together 5,000 food packs and 2,000 relief packs, right? So a food pack is $6 and a relief pack is $22. So you do the math, however number of relief packs or food packs you can donate or you can contribute, please do that. We will post the link to the website on how to donate and support that campaign. And then if there's anything else, Mark, that's specific to any more information about the Be a Hunger Warrior campaign of Kusina ng Kalinga you'd like to share. You're on mute, by the way.
Yeah, just we have our Facebook page, Kusina ng Kalinga. So please visit and like that. But for the specific campaign that we're doing now, Hunger Warrior, if you want to just see all of these things I'm sharing with you, just go there. You'll see, so many people.
Baka pumutok na puso ko niyan, Mark.
So just join the Hunger Warrior. I am a Hunger Warrior Facebook group. That's where we hope to see 1 million people signing up there. Because we want to be able to show people that, ordinary people, there's nothing small. Your 5 loaves and 2 fish is important. It's very important.
And they will multiply, yes.
They will multiply. They will never doubt that grace will work its way to multiply. This is really the miracles of solidarity. So those are really my 2 things. Visit the Kusina ng Kalinga Facebook page and like it. And please join the Facebook group, I Am Hunger Warrior.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Mark. Just a little trivia. Actually, Mark, you and I probably met like 3 times. And this is really the longest time we talked because it's always in an event, a conference or whatever. Yes, and we have to do it live.
Prior to running up the stage, this is Donna, this is what we're going to say, and then go up stage. So,
I know, right? So, but that's what GK does for you, right? I feel like everyone in GK is family, right? And
yep,
obviously, I've seen your name and face, I've heard your name and everything.
same
But
here.
yeah, this is the
Same
third
here.
time we've talked. Really, maybe second or third time or whatever. But we all feel like family, right? And when we are called, I've said this before, when God calls you, it's in a very loud voice, and you cannot ignore it. And that's what I also picked up from your journey into this work and everything. And maybe someday we'll take on different roles or whatever, but I really feel that we're always going to be part of the Gawad Kalina family.
Yep.
So maraming salamat, Mark.
Maraming
And
salamat.
thank you everyone for joining us this evening. Make it a habit every Thursday, 5 p.m. Pacific. Please join us in Kwentong GK. And this has been Donna Reyes and with Mark Lawrence Cruz for another episode, episode 10 of Kwentong GK. Good night, everyone, and good
Daghang salamat
morning.
sa tanan. Bye-bye.
Bye bye.